So I'm Ben Bassin, and this is Jamal Sosner and John Huddy. And Jamal and I are emergency physicians at University of Michigan who have a strong interest in design and operational and process improvement. And John Huddy is a healthcare architect who has designed more EDs than anybody else in the world, pretty much, so has an incredible amount of experience. And so we thought having him here gives a nice perspective to some of our observations. So we're hoping just to spend a couple of minutes talking about just some things to be aware of that we've learned over time, and as we study architecture and design more and process improvement, that might be beneficial as you're thinking about your next renovation or rebuild, because all of you in your career, if you haven't been already, will be pulled into these projects. We have no disclosures, and as mentioned, John has designed more EDs than anybody in the world, so has a lot of valuable perspective. I think from a physician perspective, from our standpoint, I think there's some things to know about working with architects. They're not all the same, for one, but two is a lot of the work falls on us. I think we depend heavily on the architect to do a lot of the work, and really you need to know your material beforehand and know where you want to go before you even bring design firms or architects on board. You really want to have a multidisciplinary design team thinking of roles that aren't traditional. Anybody who touches the patient or is involved in the patient care journey in the ED should really be involved somehow in your design team, because their perspectives are valuable, and I think we frequently don't consider their perspectives so they can do their work well, and it affects patient care and patient safety. We talk a lot about lean facility design principles, which really are making the form fit the function. So think about what you're trying to accomplish and what you're trying to do, and then do your design or your building around that. Frequently we do the opposite way. We build things we think we need. We want more capacity because we think that solves everything. And then a month after it opens, you realize it doesn't do anything that you wanted it to do. And now you have a 25-year project on your hands that you've spent a lot of money on. Don't underestimate the power of mock-ups. We'll talk about that more in a few minutes. And then a lot of administrators don't like the concept of lean facility design because it does tend to cost more time and money up front, but it will guarantee you that it will save you magnitudes of time and money in the long run if you engage in the process. So I think really the first step is kind of knowing where you're starting from. You really have to know your current state. You have to know your numbers. These are metrics that almost everybody collects, no matter what kind of department you are or what size you are, or what your mission is. You really need to know your front-end numbers, your middle numbers, and your back-end numbers of patient flow. And you really have to know where your pinch points are. What are you trying to improve? What are you trying to fix? By how much? By when? And figure out how are you going to do that before you ever start thinking about building anything. You really have to know your population and future trends. So not just knowing that, in this case, that the growth of this population is going to be 5.5% over the next 5 years. It's important to know the right side, which is which segments of the population are growing, which ones are going to have the biggest needs for your department, knowing about strategic initiatives, market share, pending mergers and acquisitions of other health systems, future volumes, other healthcare delivery paradigms that are shaping up either at your health system or others, and how it's going to impact your current building and your future building. Because again, these are 25-year projects, so you really have to start to anticipate in the future of what emergency care is going to look like for you and for other health systems around you. And so really the biggest thing to do is, before you ever start thinking about designing anything new, is to optimize what you have. So really doing some lean process improvement and mapping the 7 kind of workflows, or 7 flows through healthcare, which is really the flow of patients, staff, family, information and data, medications, supplies, and equipment, and then looking at your value stream mapping for each of those flows, figuring out how you can improve those. And usually you can get 10 to 20% of operational improvement or efficiency improvement just by doing that without ever designing any new space, any new care rooms, or bringing any more capacity online. And so what I think it really comes down to is getting the patient to the right treatment at the right place and at the right time. And so you have to have a really transparent, reliable, and simple process for segmenting patient flow and how you do this. You can design a system that can handle and can flex in real time, by day of week, time of day. You want to think about triage not as really a place, but a process. It should really enable your workflows and your patient throughput, not hinder it or create bottlenecks. And you really want to match your service delivery options to any incoming patient streams and take out anything that's waste or not of value. So this is just from Brian Zink, so Nate's in the audience from Brown, but of kind of when they were redoing their main emergency department, of just they spent a lot of time doing patient throughput streaming on what do we want our delivery to look like, how do we map that out, how do we create a paradigm that's easily visual to other people and we can reproduce. And then you really start thinking about your future state. So I've done my operational process improvement. I figured out where I want to go. I know my numbers. And now you start mapping and doing small experiments for the future state. So let's take our new paradigm and let's start doing some experiments with it. Let's collect data as we go, do PDCA cycling, and make some operational improvements. And then we can start thinking about how a design can impact it and further it for us. So there's just collecting some of their data as they're going to see kind of what integrative steps they can make to make iterative change. And then we always hear about queuing theory, and you have to understand queuing theory, I think, as you're doing kind of operational and throughput optimization. We could spend hours talking about that in alone as a process or a theory. It's really just a mathematical model to calculate performance metrics and figuring out where the gaps are in the system. It helps analyze how resource-constrained systems respond to various demands. But really, you don't want to use it as a stand-all mechanism for everything you're building on. It just really should be used to inform a lot of simulation modeling that you're going to do to make sure your simulation model is tuned to what you want it to measure. So with that, I'll turn it over to John. He has, again, tons of experience and does a lot of simulation modeling to take us forward into the next piece.